Welcome to episode 10 of Change Food Eats. I'm your host, Diane Hatz, and today we have Annette Nielsen from Culinary Medicine NYC. As a health and wellness specialist, Annette Nielsen's career in food, nutrition, and culinary programming started over 20 years ago. She has cooked in the kitchen of glorious food, published articles and tested recipes for the Center for Science in the Public Interest, helped launch and manage a shared-use kitchen and coordinated community farm-to-table events. She leads culinary nutrition programming for medical residents, cooking workshops for senior citizens and families at cooking schools, and teaches culinary nutrition at Ronald McDonald House, as well as at urban gardens and on rural farms. Welcome, Annette Nielsen. So great to have you. How are you doing?
I am well, and so wonderful to see you. It's been a while since we've been in the same physical space, for sure.
I know. Are you still here in the city?
I am. I'm living in Harlem, and it's been a wild kind of 6-7 months, right?
So you were here the whole time? Because I've been here the whole time also during the pandemic.
Yes.
Yeah.
We've been here. So
not good in the spring. I was not.
I know it's you tend to forget how crazy it did get, and the lines at the stores and
the fear.
Yes,
the fear
for sure. A lot of fear, stress. It's that unknown element
right.
is kind of when you know what you're facing, you can take steps to counteract or make things better. But when you don't know what's next, it's that is so challenging, I find.
Yeah, me too. And not to freak anyone out, but I just heard a report that they found, I think in Australia, that the virus lives longer on like hard surfaces like metal and glass, and it can live up for 28 days.
Lovely.
Yeah, and when it first started, I was swabbing. Like I would go out with like a Lysol wipe. I had to hold the doors, stick it out the doors. And now I'm like, I'll wash my hands. Now it's like, I'm really going to have to clean, I guess.
And I've been a little bit probably less careful just because our whole family got COVID, and it's like, so I feel like, okay, so I'm protected, but we don't know really, right? So it's we all need to still, be very vigilant, I think, with this sneaky virus, and do all that we can to keep everybody safe.
I agree. So switching topics, because this is supposed to be lighthearted.
Yeah.
What are you eating today?
So I made something a little seasonal. I had prepared a butternut squash bisque, and I love taking the seeds from inside the squash and roasting them. It's a bit of a process. It's not as easy as I always thought it was, but I usually boil the seeds to get the filament off and the fiber off of the seeds that is strained, and then I dry them, and then I roast them with a little olive oil and sea salt. So
do you have to go through all that? I thought you just put oil and salt on them and put them in the oven.
You can. I find like if they're bigger seeds, I want them cooked through and not just browned, roasted. So I read this method someplace a long, long time ago, and I don't know, I've just adopted it as the way I prepare them. But they're tasty and they're crunchy, and I like something crunchy, and and I have some cider, some warmed cider. So I've got the fall thing happening.
Alcoholic or non-alcoholic?
No, non-alcoholic. I have this afternoon. In fact, I'm going to be filling up our community fridge on our block this afternoon. So
We just started one up on 12th Street and First Avenue.
Oh, fabulous! That's great.
It got vandalized before it was ever official. So now we're on our second fridge.
That happened to us too.
Yeah. Really?
Yeah.
Because I hadn't heard of this happening. Someone just tipped the whole thing over and it broke.
Well, ours was actually stolen, but it happens. But it's been a great kind of community exercise, I think, and trust, and we all take turns cleaning it, and I'm going to be filling it today, and I try to be very careful about labeling things and putting a date on them so that people are aware of when things are put in.
So we're adjusting that. So for anyone who might not know what a community fridge is, they have started popping up all over the world. Actually, from what I understand, they started in Germany about 2014. But essentially, someone gets a fridge, someone gets a power supply, they plug it in, the community puts food in, the community takes food out. So for anybody, it's not all of them I have found are 24/7. Ours is 24/7. Is yours? It's open, all day, all night. You just open it and take what you want. What's great here is this restaurant, SMAC, which is this amazing mac and cheese restaurant. They had wanted to do it, so I partnered with them. And it's right outside, but they fill the freezer with their mac and cheese, which is not cheap for anyone to take. No. So we're trying to actually get different restaurants to sort of donate. And then I don't know if you know Wenjie Ying. We interviewed her.
Absolutely. Local Roots, yeah.
Yes. So Local Roots on Fridays is going to be delivering their vegetables and fruits that they haven't sold through their CSA program. So we're going to get fresh food in it. So I'm very excited.
That's fabulous. Yeah, I've been, piling it with, fresh fruits and vegetables and, hopeful that, but yeah, we've partnered with a restaurant too that's right on the corner. They're providing the electricity. It's Setapani, a wonderful restaurant that's been around in Harlem for, over 20 years now. But wow. They're also putting some of their food in the evening, I've noticed. So it's really, I think, one of those feel-good things. I mean,
right.
It's just, yeah.
Right. And it's not, and this is the thing, because I just read this article in Civil Each, which really, actually, to be honest, pissed me off about how they're so horrible, blah, blah, blah. You know what? They're not going to end hunger, but they are a phenomenal way to build community and to feed people. Like, you're in New York City. For those of you who aren't in New York City, kudos to New York City for delivering food to anyone who needs it. Like, they not only have it at schools, they will deliver it to you. But it's what I've seen, and they are trying to do better. It's not the best. It's not always the best. It can be a lot of processed. So that's why people like Annette and I are trying to get fresh fruits and vegetables into these refrigerators so neighbors can have healthy food. I mean, do you agree?
Oh, for sure. And I think, one of the things that, we've noticed during COVID is that, if you have, a predisposition to diabetes or, any other, of these things that are related to health and diet, you have a greater chance of, if you get COVID, of not having great outcomes, right? So I think, the focus on really trying to get good food, it's not just any food, I mean, yes, food is good. I mean, yes, you need calories to exist, but, everybody deserves, I believe everyone deserves to eat good food. And,
I do too, and I don't think price should be a determinant or a deterrent.
I know.
Okay, but this is a great segue into my first question for you. How do you define healthy food?
So for me, it's, I think we have to look at, those things that are culturally relevant first. I mean, it can't just be what, I say is healthy or, a registered dietitian says is healthy. I mean, certainly a dietitian knows, what our body needs. I'm not downplaying that, but I think we have to look to cultural relevancy. We have to think about, when I teach kids or even senior citizens, cooking, I always talk about eating a rainbow every day.
Right.
And it's kind of a fun exercise to go through, the colors of the rainbow and what fruits and vegetables fall into that color spectrum. And how you could eating a really diverse diet gives you a diverse, vitamins and minerals and fiber and, the things that are necessary to be, have your body get what it needs and to be healthy.
Okay. I have to ask you this though. Two things. One, I don't eat a rainbow every day. I want to say I do. What if I eat a rainbow every week? Is there leeway on that eat a rainbow every day thing?
Of course there is. I mean, I don't like to make, perfection the enemy of the good here. I think if we're all attempting to increase the variety of foods we eat, and, eat seasonally, because that's going to be less expensive too if you're eating foods that are in season and, not eating asparagus in January, perhaps in New York City. Asparagus might be great someplace else, but maybe not here. And to try to, try new things, because you may, we have these ideas about, when we're kids, what we will and will not eat, or, and sometimes you have legitimate allergies or,
Right.
you can't eat certain things. But I think overall, if you're trying each day to, do the good thing, prepare more whole foods instead of, time is of the essence too. And if you're working two jobs, planning out a meal for you and your family is not always possible. So you've got to do the best you can, and there's nothing wrong with, eating frozen vegetables. I mean, they are picked at their prime and preserved at their prime, and frozen, canned. I mean, as long as they're not loaded up with a lot of extra salt, I mean, I think there are ways we don't have to be perfect at this, but I think we got away for a time. I mean, I remember growing up and, TV dinners were
Oh, me too.
really,
Oh.
the perfect thing for the working mom, and for sure. I mean, in our household, it was a big treat if we got a TV dinner. They were.
Did you have the one with that blob of stuff that was like an apple cobbler?
Yes.
Like that unknown surprise dessert thing?
Exactly. And who knows what was in it, right?
Yeah.
but yeah, I think, we have to be realistic in terms of people's schedules and it's a hard one. We're not in a society anymore that's agrarian based. So it's not like, we're living on farms and growing and producing and raising our own food. For the most part. I mean, I lived in upstate New York for a long time and, many people were in that position, but that's not the norm, for at least those of us who live in, an urban center. So.
Right.
Yeah.
So secondly, you brought up a term that I hear a lot and I see a lot, and that's culturally appropriate food.
Right.
So I'm second generation, like 90-something% Ukrainian. I don't think I should be eating potato pancakes and pierogies all day. Like, what does culturally appropriate food? Does that mean, people who come from another area, one generation removed? Like, what do you mean when you talk about that?
I guess, the way I've had it described to me is like, so I'm, a pretty white woman. I mean, I don't mean pretty. I mean, I'm white, right?
You are pretty. You are very pretty.
But thank you. But it's like this idea that there's one way of eating, right? And and I've taught kids, who were from a wide range of backgrounds, especially like say in a nursery school in New York City. I might have, kids that are Asian, African American, Italian and Irish all in one class, right? You have, a great variety of backgrounds. And it's like, I guess for me, it's not making assumptions that what I like and what tastes good to me and what I might deem as comfort food is going to be the same for anyone else, That
makes sense.
And I think, I think it's having an awareness of that there are so many different backgrounds across the planet, and to be respectful of and, I think it's Rachel Ray who coined the term, don't yuck my yum or something, but it's like, don't turn your nose up at something, especially if you're, with a group of people, because somebody else might really like anchovies,
Right.
And and if you say that you don't like them or, as kids sometimes do, make fun of it, you might hurt somebody's feelings, and it's, inadvertently, maybe not intentionally, but I think it's awareness, really.
Right. That makes sense. So you're involved with community gardens. Can you tell us like how you're involved and what you think about them? Are they part of the solution to hunger, et cetera, et cetera? Sure.
So I have not been in a community garden this past year, but I have worked on many garden projects, and the one that I really probably thought covered the most basis was when I worked on in upstate New York. And it was part of a bigger project. It was a community center that our little town had taken over from the county to make into kind of an art center, offering a wide variety of classes and programming. Attached to that, it was in the middle of town in a way, but it was also adjacent to a lot of farmland. And for the first couple of years, we were just kind of getting the structure together, and there was a kitchen that was attached to it was a courthouse, but it was also a prison. It was a jail, and it had a jail kitchen to feed, as they called the trustees that stayed there.
So it was a working jail. It wasn't a former jail that was renovated.
Correct. It was, and then the jail portion moved to the county seat, and we took over all of this space. And it was a lot of work, and it was a historic building. So it was still an ongoing project now, but that started in like 2002, 2001. So the kitchen was used first, and we renovated the kitchen to become a shared use facility, which, we can talk a little bit about, but that, was really set up and designed to provide education, but also be used by people who might want to process and sell to the public. So if you are going to make a product, say you've got a bumper crop of tomatoes and you're a farmer, and you want to make salsa, you need a license, and space in which to do that. You could.
That's not a community garden.
No, but I'm talking about this. This whole space, this whole campus, if you will, also had all this land around it. So we wanted to be able to, in our classes, in our programming, be able to grow and teach growing, and to kids, and then also, have it use the kitchen to teach cooking and good healthful eating. So that we were able to get this space to, it was 8,000 square feet. It was huge.
Wow.
So we had like 80 beds that we created, not with wood or anything, but we just raked up. But it was a huge project. And we were able to work with the K through 6 students across the street at the school. It was a K through 12 school. And every classroom with their teachers decided what they were going to plant. So we made, little paper pots, and they all planted their seedlings. And on planting day, which I remember the date, it was June 5th in 2009, we had the governor's chef, a man by the name of Noah Sheets, really wonderful. If you don't know him, you should meet Noah. He came and helped us plant our garden. And I had this great photo of all the kids, at their assigned bed, their class's bed that they planted. And, little kids from kindergarten up to 6th grade were planting. We also engaged, they still had ag classes there and still do, an ag program at the high school. So they did all the soil testing ahead of time. They worked with Cornell Cooperative Extension, made sure that if we needed nutrients, we knew what they might be. And then we also had programming that was set up for kids that qualified that were in high school to work through the summer, because there weren't a lot of jobs up there nearby. And they were able to help with the harvest and the tending of the garden. And we also had a lunch, learn, and play program for younger kids. So they were working in the garden all through the summer and cooking.
Okay, so I'm a little confused. Is that a school garden or community garden?
It was a community garden. We engaged the school because the school was kind of the center of the community.
Okay.
But this was a space that was really designated for our entire community. And I had, senior citizens come in and do gleaning days, because we planted some wild, things that weren't typical, plants maybe that you'd see. And, but a lot of seniors knew what to do with them, or were going to find a way to do it, work with them.
And I'm really big on people using terminology in our field for people who might not. What is a gleaning day?
So it's coming in, and like when you've got excess produce and nobody's using it, or you can't find a space for it immediately, it's rescuing in effect, I think.
Right.
Making sure that food doesn't go to waste, which I felt was key. I mean, we started a whole composting program too for the weeds and things. We really were trying to do a whole comprehensive effort. And the kids that worked, the teens that worked in the garden through the summer that year, also on Saturdays would take produce to our food pantry because there wasn't any fresh food at the time going there. And then they would go to the market.
Okay, so I'm still stuck on the gleaning thing. So when the senior citizens come in to glean, do they keep the food? Does the food go to a food pantry? And do you know?
Okay. We were very open-ended on that because, I mean, some did keep, what they were coming in to glean. And some of them worked with really younger kids and talked to them about what the food was. And so we were trying to make, the connection between the elderly and little kids, because I think that's a really important connection that we don't always see anymore, especially with families spread out over different parts of the country or world even. And it was really, I think, a great learning experience for everybody that first year, in terms of, all the things you can do around gardening. We had theater programs happening in the garden, that were using plants. We had one guy who was a wonderful floral designer, but he made a Three Sisters structure, and Three Sisters are beans, squash, and corn. It's the native people's story about those three items. And he made this kind of teepee structure so that the beans could trellis up, and, the corn was planted in there too. It was really a lovely piece of art in itself. And, this whole garden was also connected to a dinner we had started, which was a farm to table dinner in 2002, which, served 400 or 500 people. And all the kids were servers. We made the pottery for the dinner, for the serving platters in our pottery studio. And it was all volunteers that came into the kitchen, the shared use kitchen, and we would, prepare food all week. And it was all local. I mean, we had the number of food miles traveled as they track that, where everything comes from. Our average was 12 miles.
Wow.
Not with, I mean, we took out olive oil and we took out wine. Our wine came from the Finger Lakes region. But, I was trying to talk to the kids about how this was really kind of like the Tuscany of upstate New York, rolling hills, beautiful, how we had, it's where Grandma Moses is from,
right.
Is that area. So, the checkerboard hills and all of that. So it was, it was a great, I think in terms of programmatically, it was, one of the most just comprehensive look at what a garden can do in arts and nutrition, education.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, you're saying that the difference between a garden and a community garden is that community gardens involve community, and it's not just about growing the food. It's also about all the other things that come around it. Right. The dinners, the theater, the teaching, gleaning, which you mentioned briefly is one of my big things. Is I think that isolation, loneliness, and lack of community is an epidemic that's still not talked about enough. And I think that community gardens and things like programs like that really do help build community. And that's the community fridges. They also help.
Absolutely. I think, especially, what we've seen over the last 6-7 months. I mean, the mental health issues that have, we've had an increase. I mean, you can see it, going out into the streets, really. I mean, it's right. People are, suffer silently in many cases, going through this, alone. I feel, as much as sometimes you feel cooped in, when you're in a small apartment in New York City, I was so grateful that I had my husband and my son here, to actually see somebody in person, to have a conversation. And, I'm a big hugger. So it's like, it's hard now to go out and see people that I might recognize on the street and not, you don't give somebody a hug anymore, which is okay. But it's just, you got to remind yourself to.
Not okay. It's not okay. I slipped once. Whoops.
Yeah.
We were both like, whoops.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, okay. So switching just a bit. Can you define what culinary nutrition is and how you're involved with it?
Yeah, it's kind of an interesting term, isn't it? So I see it. I mean, it's probably, I'm self-describing this. I mean, I am not a registered dietitian. I did not go to school for nutrition studies. I mean, really, I went back for a program last year through Cornell that was a 6-month program that was in nutrition and healthy living. Which, intuitively we might know, like, okay, I should eat more fruits and vegetables. Right. But what's the science behind that? And I wanted to know the science. And
wow.
And that gave me some of the science, not 2 years worth of studying it. I'm not, as I say, I'm not an RD, registered dietitian, but, it gave me more of ammunition, if you will, if I'm teaching, to talk about the benefits of fiber or a certain vitamin, perhaps. And I think, so culinary nutrition to me is, when I'm teaching any group, whether it's a neurodiverse audience, which I teach on occasion.
Did you say neurodiverse?
Mm-hmm. People on the
is
spectrum,
Oh, okay. Is that, I'm sorry, I did not know that's a term used today.
Yeah.
But I just, you mean like autism and.
Yep, exactly.
Okay. Because I don't think everyone's going to have heard that term.
Sorry.
No. It's great. It's great to know.
And, I look at, when I'm teaching cooking, I always look at things that I think are going to be healthful. So even if I teach perhaps mac and cheese, and I love mac and cheese.
Yum.
Right. I will add in another color. What do you think that might be?
Broccoli. Green.
You got it. Right. Mac and cheese and greens, right? So, you're adding a little something to it that is maybe for a kid is introducing a new vegetable for the first time, with something that they already eat. Maybe it comes out of a blue box, but maybe you're making it from scratch. So, I kind of try to look at things, and like ice cream, maybe I'll make an ice cream, which is, the banana mashed up and frozen. It kind of has, it's kind of like ice cream, right? And it doesn't have the dairy. So if you're trying to eliminate dairy or can't have dairy, it's a nice way to have a frozen treat in the summertime,
Have you discovered Oatly, except for the sugar? It's got a lot of sugar in it. But Oatly, the oat ice cream?
I haven't tried the ice cream, but I should do that for sure. Yeah.
I'm not a strawberry fan, and the strawberry's phenomenal.
All right. That's a great endorsement.
It does have sugar though. So just, but every now and then, right.
It, again, perfection. We don't have to be perfect.
Right.
And everybody needs a treat once in a while.
I agree exactly. We'll be back in a moment with today's guest, Annette Nielsen. But right now, let's check in with Chef Ebeth Johnson to see what she is going to share with us today. With fall season coming upon us, I think we're going to be talking about squash and pumpkins. Take it away, Chef Ebeth.
Hey, it's Ebeth Johnson, your mindful eating coach. So great to see you this week. So excited to welcome in fall because it means it's squash season. There's so many different types of squash, right? But for this week, I'm going to focus on butternut squash and show you how to make a super simple and really delicious roasted butternut squash soup with ginger and lemongrass. You're going to love it. It's going to go into your fall repertoire of soups. Let's get in the kitchen and make it. Here's what you need for the recipe. Butternut squash, coconut oil, maple syrup, coconut milk, some ginger, lemongrass, lemon peel, cinnamon, and of course a little salt and pepper to taste. Let's get started. The first thing we need to do is get this squash in the oven. So let's start by cutting the ends off And then we're gonna just cut it straight down the middle. Ooh, look at that gorgeous color. And again, this one. When you're picking your squash, you want to choose the heaviest for the size. The heavier they look, the sweeter and more dense the flesh will likely be. After we've cut it in half, we just need to scoop out the seeds. A spoon is perfect for that. Just scoop around, and the seeds come out easily. You can always save the seeds if you would like, and you can toast them up. It'll be delicious. Make sure you get all these little bits out of here too. Sometimes they can be a little slimy. Once we've got the squash cut and the seeds scooped out, we're just going to put a little oil on here. I like to use my hands so I can put all my loving energy in here. Plus, it saves me from having to clean another tool. So I just lovingly massage a little bit of coconut oil onto my squash. Make sure you do the back side as well as the flesh. It actually feels really good. It smells so good too. This is a raw coconut oil, so it definitely smells coconutty. And then we'll just put these cut side down on our baking sheet. Let's see if I can make these fit. Yes, boom. So, and then we'll put these in the oven at 400 degrees for about 40 minutes or until you can pierce them easily with a fork. All right, we'll put these in the oven, 400 degrees, for about 40 minutes. Meanwhile, we'll make our lemongrass and ginger broth. To the oil, we're going to add some chopped onion. And because this is a pureed soup, we don't have to be too particular about the size or shape. So I'm doing this very rudimentarily here. All right, we're going to just toss these babies in here. Get them all coated in the coconut oil. We'll let those cook on a medium-high flame while we prepare the rest of the ingredients. Next up, let's add our ginger. We need about an inch chunk here. I'm not going to bother with peeling it. We're going to just slice it and we'll add it in. Now, a lot of times in a butternut squash soup, you will see apple added to it, particularly Granny Smith apple, and that is to add a little bit of acid and brightness to the soup. In this case, we're going to use the ginger and the lemongrass to create a similar brightness, but without the apple. So also we'll add a little bit of kick to it as well, which I like. Oftentimes, butternut squash soup can be too sweet, and this nice ginger is going to prevent that. So don't worry, we're going to temper the spiciness with the coconut milk. It will be perfectly balanced. Now we'll add some lemongrass. I absolutely love lemongrass. It's in season in the fall. You can get it in the farmers markets. And depending on how fresh it is, it'll be easier or harder for you to chop it. If you can't chop it well, that's okay. Just kind of bend it up with your hands and put it in the pot. It'll all get blended up anyway. And that was about a 2-inch length of lemongrass. It smells amazing as you're cutting it. And we're going to add this to our broth as well. Well, it's not broth yet, but we're going to add it to the pan. And then we'll add some liquid to it to make a broth. Wow, smells so good, you guys. And we're getting a nice little bit of color on our onions. Looking good. Now we're going to add just a little lemon peel here. Now you could use a zester if you want. Or you can do what I'm doing here, just slicing a little bit off. But I have a lot of pith here. This white bit is called pith, and it's a bit bitter. So I'm just going to move my knife over it a little more to take that bit off. So that it'll get mostly the lemon and not so much the bitterness of the pith, which is that white part. A couple bits of lemon peel to go in there. And you see we've got a nice little brown bisque at the bottom of the pan. That's not burning, baby. That is all flavorless. I'm going to pick it all up with some water. We've got 4 cups of water here. And my goal is this is going to cook down while our butternut squash is cooking. We're going to bring this to a boil and let it simmer. And what we'll end up with is closer to 3 cups of this liquid, which is going to be flavored with the ginger, the lemongrass, the onion, the lemon peel. It's going to be absolutely amazing. And what we'll do is we'll puree it with the roasted squash. That'll be up next. So we're going to let this come to a boil and just simmer for as long as it takes for our squash to get tender. Now that it's boiling, we'll cover it and turn the flame down a little bit to medium-low so that it can simmer for about 30-40 minutes while the squash cooks. Now you can go do something else. All right, let's check on our squash. It's been just about enough time. Oh yeah, look at it. It smells amazing. Now let's just pierce this with a fork, and you see it's so soft, it's just pressing away. So that is ready to go. We'll just grab this, take it out. Got these beauties out of the oven. Now they're quite hot, so I'm gonna let them sit for just a little while until they're cool enough for me to handle, and then we'll scoop it out and we'll get to pureeing this amazing soup. I've let the squash cool a little bit. I'm gonna just flip these gorgeous, oh, so gorgeous. This is tender. The reason why I like to roast the squash instead of boiling it is when you roast it, it just makes the flavor richer, more sweeter. And I think it also prevents the squash from getting more watery. I just like, but most importantly, I really like the flavor. So we just scoop this out. Let me just do that for all of these. Oh my gosh. If you weren't going to make a soup out of this, by the way, you could also, just serve this as mashed butternut squash on the side of something. You could season it with some cinnamon, nutmeg, maybe a little maple syrup, a little orange juice. That'll be beautiful. Thanksgiving's coming up. Be good for that too. And it just smells amazing, even as we're just scooping this up. And look at this orange. It's just so gorgeous. Epitome of fall, right? Yeah. Oh, don't leave any behind now. Let's see that. That one here. And by the way, I know some of us like to take little shortcuts, and you might consider getting like a canned pumpkin or squash to make a soup. And just know that you really need to check the ingredients when it comes to canned pumpkin. A lot of times it's not even pumpkin, it's squash, which is okay if you want squash. But if you're looking for pumpkin, definitely need to make sure you read the ingredients, unless you do it yourself like we did here. So what I've done is I've separated the lemongrass ginger broth using a sieve. I poured all of that from my pan, just like that. Got a little steamy there for a second. And what I have left here is the onion, the ginger, and the lemongrass. And I do want to keep that. And the reason I'm separating the broth is because I want to be able to add just enough broth and coconut milk to get the texture that I want. All right, let's assemble this soup. We have in our pot onions, ginger, lemongrass, and our lemon peel. And we have here our butternut squash, which we roasted. We have about 2.5 cups here. We're going to add to our pot. I've got 1 cup of coconut milk. Oh yes, that's going to give it that rich creaminess. I'm really just mixing this together to see the liquid ratio here. We're going to puree all of this with some of our broth. Okay, altogether we got about 2.5 cups of broth, but we may not use all of it for this, depending on how thick you want your soup to be. So I'm going to puree this in the pot with an immersion blender. Hold on to your hats, people. They're quite thick, so we're going to add a little more broth. This is starting to look good. Now, up to this point, we haven't seasoned it or added any salt or anything to that. So let's have a taste, and then we're going to add our salt, our maple syrup, and a little bit of cinnamon. All right, let's season this baby up. We'll start with a little salt. Now, keep in mind, we haven't added any salt yet. So I'm going to add about ½ teaspoon here of salt. We're going to add a little maple syrup, a couple tablespoons. Good. Salt and the maple syrup are just going to help amplify the sweetness of the squash and enhance the flavor a little bit with the salt, of course. Mix that in well. This is just the most gorgeous color of the soup. Let's give it a taste, shall we? Oh, yeah. That's perfect. Delicious. Put a little more salt. I always do that. I say it's perfect, and then I say a little salt in it. Then we're just going to add a couple dashes of cinnamon in here. Just a wee bit. Stir that in. I'm going to add just a little acid to this. Squeeze a little bit of fresh lemon juice. Not too much, just maybe about a tablespoon, just to brighten it up. Then we're ready to ladle this into our bowl. Now I would serve this, you can serve it on its own as an appetizer. You can make a meal out of it, serve it with a nice salad, maybe with some chicken or salmon or beans added to it. Gorgeous. And then when I serve this, I would put just a thin slice of lemon on top. And when people eat it, they'll just mash that in there, get a little more flavor. That lemon. And ta-da.
Thanks so much, Chef Ebeth. I feel like I learned a lot today. So now let's go back to our interview and chat and talk with Annette Nielsen. What do you think are the most important issues in food right now?
You know, access to good food for everybody. But that, you know, when you really tease that apart, you know, you need to kind of look at, you know, are there grocery stores there? Are there, you know, is it just a matter of money and income? So, you know, and so, you know, that leads you down the road to, you know, are people making a living wage? You know, so poverty, you know, if we don't have everyone at a certain income level, it's hard to think that everyone's going to have a good diet. You know, I mean, I don't know
Right.
how you make that happen. So, you know,
That was going to be my next question, because I might get tough here because I know you can get in the weeds with me. But like, I've been doing this 20 years. I know you've been doing it for about the same amount of time. 20 years ago, talking about it, raising awareness, it was crucial. There wasn't much more you could really do.
Right.
Now, I mean, we're getting, with climate change, with the awareness of social inequities, we got to stop talking, you know?
We know what the issues are, right?
Yes.
We've identified the problem, right? So how do we start, addressing the problem and making it better and coming up with some answers or solutions? And I think, part of it's policy, but how do you get good policy? You've got to elect people to office.
You got to get the people on the ground, right, to get out to vote. So I am not a top-down person at all. I'm all bottom up. And we got to activate people. But if you aren't making a wage where you can afford, because look, I'm lucky. I can go into an organic health food store and generally buy what I want. I can buy Oatly, which a lot of people aren't going to be able to afford it.
Sure.
And I have decided this is my focus, my passion, and I'm going to be a pain in the ass about it. I want to build a roadmap. I don't want to do a report. I don't do it. I want to look to see who's doing what to solve these problems and put it together.
Right.
And then really build it into something, and not me alone, but because there's people who are doing pieces of it. Anyway, I interrupted you. I didn't mean to.
No. Yeah, I think, no, it's exactly right. We do need kind of to look at it on a bigger scale and see who's doing what, because, you even look at the organizations that are doing such good work across the board, whether it be in nutrition education or, community gardens or school gardens or, looking at hunger relief and all of that. I mean, we have lots of infrastructure out there, and we've even probably increased the number of nonprofits working in this arena over the last 10 years, right? I mean, I think.
I'm sorry, you said they were increased?
I said I'm pretty sure we could safely say that we've increased the number of not-for-profits working in the space of, food security, nutrition, all of that, right?
Yes.
So,
yes. But wait, can we get into my bigger pet peeve? What do you think about the nonprofit industrial complex? I have found that the people are.
I was just right.
Okay. No,
I was going to say that. No, exactly. And I think that, we have allowed the very rich to have an out, right?
Yes.
If I want to write a check for $25,000 to a nonprofit organization, to support their good work, I take that as a tax deduction, and I therefore pay less in taxes at the end of the year, right?
It's changed. You do know it's changed a bit. At 25,000, you can, but just so people know.
Right. No, but just so we've allowed government to not have the same responsibility that it used to have, right? And I think, overall. I
hear you, but look at where we are with government. Do you think they would be doing anything? My thing is a lot of these foundations, the one with the most, and not all, there are philanthropists under the radar doing great stuff that you don't hear about. But, I spent 2 weeks just applying for grants that I just got rejected for. So I've wasted 2 weeks of my life. 2 weeks of my life. And everyone's like, once you do it once, it's good for all of them. No, it's not, because the next one took 2 weeks for nothing, not a penny. And I'm doing stuff more on the ground. I'm not in a community garden, though, building a community garden. People like Steve Ritz can't get living wage funding. Like, people who have the vision, who are really doing change, don't get the funding. And then, like, this one grant that I applied for, not only did I have to spell out down to the supplies I was going to get, I had to have like all the outcomes. You don't know that. Like, why don't foundations invest in people and in vision? It's a nonprofit. This is where I think the exploration, because the for-profits will come in and take your idea eventually.
They will.
You got me. Sorry, you got me on my soapbox. But what do you think about that?
No, I hear you on that, and I agree. But I also really feel that, if we have good government and we have good leaders, that we can accomplish a lot of the same things that maybe we've allowed nonprofits to take up.
Right. Now, realistically, let's be realistic. realistically, how can that happen? And I'm with you.
I have to believe in government. I am, I've worked in politics and government. I've worked on Capitol Hill. I so believe in our power, especially in our government look at what happened, after the Depression and WPA and all of those things that were really powerful, and job training, that really made a difference in people's lives. That wasn't a nonprofit doing that. That was trust and faith in our government. And I realize maybe we've stepped back from that a lot, but I think we have to get it back. I don't know how we go forward just relying on grants to do good work. I mean, you do great work. Steve Ritz does great work. And it's like,
I started a for-profit, just so you know. I have a for-profit consulting company because I can't get enough funding to live off of for Change Food. And I wish I could, and I want to. And like part of this Plan Eat Share I'm doing, which it's not me. There are people around the world who are planning food in public spaces for anyone to eat. I want to build it into a movement to bring it all together, database, et cetera, et cetera. I can't get funding, but I'm basing it off of in the 40s after the Depression when they built roads and it's the same type of concept where you pay farmers to come in to teach people how to plant their gardens. And
Exactly.
Yeah.
No, I mean, so I guess, maybe I'm Pollyanna,
No, you're not. No. I just want to get this out of you. I want to see your passion because you do have political experience. I don't.
Yeah, and I guess I know I worked for people that really believed in the power of government and its ability to affect change and do good. And I can't give that up. And, there's just a part of me that is just, I used to, listen to Ted Kennedy give his speeches, when I was working in his office, or listening to Daniel Patrick Moynihan on the floor of the Senate. And, and they worked with both sides of the aisle. This was a time when people had dialogue. They forged friendships no matter what party you were assigned to, and there was respect. And we have to get back to that.
Well, we cannot open that door, Annette. Not today.
All right. But I think, I have faith in us as a people that this is a great experiment, our country, and whether we're experimenting with new seeds, of a new variety that we want to try, or how we feed our nation. I mean, I believe that, yes, we can plant. And in fact, I believe, we've got amazing space in New York City to use. I mean, Central Park, why couldn't there be a dedicated area? The Brooklyn Botanic Garden, New York Botanical Garden. I mean, it's like Marcus Garvey, which is right across the street from me. I mean, it doesn't have to be huge. In fact, maybe
it also could be, it could be planners at bus stops. It does not have to be.
And just, and that is so powerful. I mean, it's a very, and it is a way to feed everybody. I agree with you. It's like if we all, and not everybody has to plant and not everybody has to harvest, but, maybe you buy the seeds for your block, in your tree boxes. And keep the
or just care. Have extra water in your cup when you're walking by a planter and water the planter. Like there, it doesn't have to be. Anyway, that's my little passion.
I love it.
You do the policy. I'll work on that part. We're going to come together. So I'm asking everyone this question. How can we create, I think I'm going to know the answer, but how can we create a food system where everyone can eat healthy food?
Well, I mean, I do believe policy is part of this, and I think, we have to have living wages for everyone. That's policy. We have to, we can't allow people to not have the dignity of a meal and, of a good meal. And I mean, how is that humane? I mean, I believe we're better than, turning a blind eye to the failings of either, government as we have it now, or policies that aren't working anymore, or funding for the programming that needs to happen. And, it's the attitude of, well, I've got enough, so I'm okay, and not caring about what your neighbor may be going through,
Right.
And
Right.
we lost something somewhere. So anyway, policy can help in that arena. I truly believe
Yes.
that. And electing people that are going to be proponents and advocates for strong policy that can, care about all of us, not just the top.
Right.
And then, and through that, addressing poverty, because no one wants to be poor.
Right.
Right. No one should. And if you are born into poverty, your chances of getting out right now are slim and none, right? And
Okay, wait, we're going to be optimistic. They're challenging. No, you know what? Because I have to say, the pandemic has been horrific, the amount of lives lost. The positive I've gotten out of it is I'm not officially part of mutual aid, but I started a group in the East Village. It's the whole concept of mutual aid. And I think that if we want policy to change, if we want living wage, if we want all that to happen, it's going to be rooted in mutual aid. It's going to be neighbors coming together to support neighbors and saying, hey, I have enough. I don't even have to give what I have to you, but I can get behind policies that will help lift other people.
Exactly. Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So do you see the overall food system right now changing for the better or for the worse, and why?
I think for the better. And, again, maybe I'm Pollyanna, but I think because we're talking about these issues more and we're really, we go pretty granular now on things. And, as more of a left-leaning person as I am, I know we pick apart things and find, we don't always see the upside of anything unless it's absolutely perfect. But I do believe, because there's, there are people running for office now that are talking about food security. We have, the Brooklyn Borough president who talks about diet and, the impact it had on his own health. It's, you never heard that maybe 10, 12 years ago.
Right.
Or in that
Cory Booker coming out with stance on factory farms. It's like a shock. We just can't, just politically, because I'm a 501c3, we can't get deep into political conversations. But it is, I never thought I'd hear a politician talking about shutting down factory farms. Never.
For sure.
So you're
so I think
correct.
Because the dialogue's out there, I think, we have this opportunity, as long as people don't get tired of talking about it, and say,
no more talking, action. We are tired of talking about it. Yeah.
You're right.
Taking action.
And the action has to happen. And I think, but through talking, you can encourage other people to take action. Right.
Correct.
And
Correct.
I think,
that's inspiration. Just, I'm defining that. That's inspiration. That's just not blah, blah, blah.
You're right. You have to be inspiring and really, and convincing that to give people the I guess that seed of making, some positive change, in their community, whether it's their block or their neighborhood or, so yeah. And that, and I've been really, through the pandemic, I just, I've met more of my neighbors as a result. We've all been socially distanced. We've been very careful with masks, but I've been really grateful for that. We've had lots of activities. We've had people show up and play music and drum circles and programs for the kids and, yoga on the street. And, we got a Safe Street designation too. So our block is, which has been amazing, especially through the summer for the kids.
Can I ask, so Avenue B is a safe street. And for anyone who doesn't know, a safe street is where they're putting barricades at the intersection. So, but here in East Village on Avenue B, safe street, go up there walking, like I was fostering a dog, so we go there for a walk. Cars, trucks. Oh yeah, because you're allowed to go to the block if you're like parked and you have to go around. They're just going up. They're going down. They don't care. They get out of their truck to move the barricade to drive the delivery truck through, and it infuriates me. I take it you did not have that.
We didn't, and maybe it's because so many kids were on the block and they were just in the space. Maybe people were knew that they probably should just stay away. We also had a trio of women who are so amazing, who got the Safe Street designation and started all this programming and started an email that gets blasted out every week and, talking about what we have coming up. And, so I think their presence too, they were vigilant about watching, anybody trying to come in or out.
I think that's big.
Little ones running around a lot. So, it was to keep them safe, really. I didn't ride my bike in that space. When I went out to ride, or my husband did, it's like we got off our bikes and walked them because there were signs up that said, wear a mask, socially distance, and walk your bike. And there were visual cues everywhere to say, this is a space for the community and, be respectful. So we were very lucky.
I don't want to diss what's going on in Avenue B. It's just the cars. It's not the people. Like, they've done a great job. They're volunteers who put the barricades out every day, and they take them back. But it's the rudeness of the drivers that doesn't. Every time I go, and I'm like, I don't feel safe walking down this road. So I think you're right. I think it's the amount of children and those 3 women. So could you send them down our way?
Yes, of course. They're really wonderful. I feel so lucky to have landed on this block 3 years ago. And, who knew that it would be Providence, that it happened, but it's been great. It's been really nice.
We've talked about this a bit throughout our conversation, but how do you think the pandemic has impacted food?
I've become much more aware of my inventory that I have, so I think, I have kept a running tally of everything I've prepared every night.
Do you know who Victor Freeberg is?
No.
I think he stopped now because the pandemic went so long. He put a photo on Instagram every single day of every single meal that he cooked. It was absolutely amazing. I think after like
amazing.
6 months.
I'm not great with Instagram, and I hate photographing my food because I would want it to look really nice, but I appreciate that. No, I decided to kind of look at what I was making, and it also, like, what I would do, say, on a Sunday evening is kind of plan out what I was going to prepare for the week, so that when I went to the store, and it was going to take me an hour in line just to get into my Whole Foods on the corner of 125th Street, and then know that probably a lot of stuff might not be there. A lot of the shelves were never filled. The meat section was, a third of what it normally was. It was a real awakening to resources and not taking for granted. So I think that was the biggest shift for me personally. I also started to think about economizing, and all right, so I had, been working in a position managing a culinary school through Fairway, and I lost my job, when COVID hits, understandably, right? But I realized that, if that was going to be extended for a long period of time, I might want to think about how I purchase food and buy food for the family, and ways to. My mother was very good at this. She still is, but she's a retired home ec teacher, so she never threw anything out. And 2 tablespoons of applesauce, it went in a little Tupperware container into the fridge. It just never thought to throw out food. So, I'm not that way, but I think, it made me, in coming up with a menu for the week, what I was going to prepare, looking at what I had in stock already, and really trying to be purposeful in the meals I prepared that were going to be healthful. My husband was on the front line working in a hospital for over a month,
Wow.
Only COVID. So, and he had COVID. We'd all had COVID right before that time, but, it made me really focus too on what I was serving, and I wanted it to be nutritious, but I also wanted it to be delicious. I mean, we certainly weren't going out to eat, so there was no like treat at the end of the week, oh, let's go out for dinner. I mean, it was all home, and so, it made me especially become more thoughtful. I mean, I always have cooked, but it made me become, more mindful of everything that I was putting in my mouth, really.
So related to this, to people cooking more at home, what do you think about the future of restaurants and food in New York City?
Oh, that's such a tough one. I mean, my heart hurts. It really does. I mean, I have always said, well, if I ever can't get a job and, I'm an old woman, I can always go waitress.
Oh, Lord. I lasted 1 week. I quit the day they were going to fire me. I am not a waitress. So
well,
I admire you.
I could work in a restaurant kitchen. I could prep, I could do all that stuff. It's like I always felt like, restaurants are that entity that, it was always a start of, if you come to this country from someplace else, you can always get a job in a restaurant, right? That was the way it used to be. It was a great entryway, to the workforce. And I'm fearful. I mean, for the industry as a whole, for people who rely on it, I think in New York, we're at 16% unemployment. And I don't know what percentage of that is restaurant workers or food workers. But, I think nationally we're at 8% unemployment, I think that's where we got. That was the September figures, perhaps. But I think, it's going to be maybe going out to eat is just going to be more of a special thing. I don't know if it'll come back the way we used to have the great food scene here in New York the same way. I think it'll exist on some level because New York is New York, but I'm hopeful once we get a vaccine that, we start to realize, a return to something that resembles what we used to have, whether, with tourism and eating out. And
have you been Midtown?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. I went to MoMA after it reopened, and I walked through Midtown. Wow. At Times Square. Different.
Yeah.
It was sad. Yeah.
I mean, I was still working in late March, and I remember I had to go into work, and the subway, my subway was down. There was a water main break or something. So I hopped on a city bike to ride down, and I was on Central Park West. I was in the middle of Central Park West riding down the street. There were no cars.
Nobody.
Nothing. And it was eerie. It was lovely at one point because it was like I felt like I was in my hometown growing up in the Adirondacks when I used to ride down the middle of the street. But it was surreal, Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I pray for the restaurants. I love that whole culture. There's nothing like going out, and being treated either well or even if you're not treated well at a restaurant. It's just, there's just something so special about the New York restaurant scene that it's not met anywhere else. And it's, it's got balls, it's got, brashness sometimes, it's got refinement, you get a great diner. I mean, it's just, you can't eat anywhere in the world like you can eat in New York. And
it'll redefine itself, I'm sure. So we have to wrap today up, but do you have anything else you'd like to share with us?
Besides vote, I hope we can all be positive and optimistic about our future, and in terms of food. We've got this opportunity now to kind of revisit how we eat, who gets to eat what and when, and, it's like, and be good neighbors, and be kind to each other. And food is one way of doing all of that, right? It's, it's a beautiful thing to sit down and share a meal. And I look forward to when I look forward to when I can have a meal with you.
I know. Thanks again for joining us today at Change Food Eats, and a big thank you to Annette Nielsen from Culinary Medicine NYC. So our next show will air November 3rd, and we'll be speaking with Mary Swander, the Poet Laureate of Iowa, and also the founder of an amazing nonprofit. I'm a little biased, I'm involved with them, but amazing nonprofit called Ag Arts. It's a nonprofit working at the intersection of art and food, which is so important. So just as a reminder, Change Food Eats shows air the first and third Tuesday of every month. You can also watch previous episodes on the Change Food YouTube channel, Instagram TV, Change Food's Facebook page, and or on our Change Food website under the Talk Show tab. I'm your host, Diane Hatz. Thank you for joining us. Eat well.